Hello, I'm Laurel Ruma, and today I'm joined by Lauri Apple, who is an Agile coach and open source evangelist at Zalando, which is Europe's largest online fashion platform. Hi, Lauri.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to talk to you because I know that Zalando has a very strong Agile culture. And so I wanted to talk about what that means to your organization and team in terms of problem solving. Why Agile?
Well, so to put that question in perspective, across the organization about 2 years ago, the tech organization decided to become quite explicit about its encouragement of Agile practices. So taking some notes from Daniel Pink's Drive, the autonomy, mastery, and purpose concepts, and applying that into a software development setting. Then also calling this radical agility. So agility is obvious in that tagline, making the presiding culture based around Agile framework. So at Zalando, you don't really have to use one framework or another. So whether you use Scrum, Kanban, some hybrid, that's not legislated because of that aspect of Daniel Pink's work, the autonomy pillar. So teams can autonomously decide what type of framework to use. And so that's how we all have kind of a common understanding of how Agile works, common framework. There are different tools like OKRs in place at the company level. So there are guideposts along the way to remind teams to use. But Agile is the encouraged approach to development. And so we find in my team, which is in the search department, which we do my team has done a lot of greenfield development. We rebuilt an architecture for search. We're like a software as a service team for other search teams. So we use Agile to make sure that we're delivering in a timely way, that we're delivering the right things, that we enjoy our work, and that we aren't just taking orders from some mysterious person. We have product specialists that sit with a team. We now have in our department a dedicated owner framework. So basically a guide for all of the teams in search. So I think it's about 8 or 9 now. It's a rapidly expanding department. So the number of people here increases quite regularly. And we are onlining new teams all the time, but we all have a very general understanding of Agile. And so we can all speak the same language.
So what kind of problems were you trying to solve with the Agile approach, especially on a tech team?
Mm-hmm. So when you have a more traditional command and control management approach, then this is not conducive to enabling teams to feel comfortable experimenting and innovating. Teams can become really detached from the products that they're building because they're just taking instructions. And so with Agile, you have product and engineering together, ideally collaborating on what to deliver per a given period. I mean, my team doesn't do sprints. We're not using Scrum. We do more of a Kanban approach. And so we have the product specialists sit with us, and together we work out what we will deliver, how, when, and it's way more collaborative and enables the developers to have part ownership in the products that they're building and have their say. And so that's much more, I guess you could call it like a flat hierarchy, because we don't have a product person from on high just sending down requirements and telling us to do things. And this is a lot more challenging for the developers because they get to use their expertise in search technologies, and we have a DevOps bent to our team. So, bringing in our DevOps expertise as well and helping to frame the actual products and services that we're building.
That's really interesting. So what roadblocks did you come across as you adapted Agile? So your team decided to do Kanban and some other teams use Scrum. How'd you get past finding people who were right for the team, the right fit, the right vision? What were some of the problems that you ran up against?
Well, certainly not everybody likes Agile, and whether they actually like Agile or they like or dislike a certain projection of Agile is up for dispute. Every case is different. In our team, I think there was a combination of luck as well as the environment that we work in, just being highly encouraging of an agile way of working. So I worked at a company before Zalando where we didn't really even talk about Scrum or Kanban or agile frameworks. We just did things and we worked. The teams had a very high level of ownership. And so we didn't really have a very, very strict agile culture. It was just, we hired for the mindset. And so we all got it. And that's just how we proceeded to work. Here, because of the size of the company, and we've been lucky in my team to just have a core group of developers who are really highly engaged and highly motivated to own the work. And not everybody came here with a full understanding of different agile frameworks or why you would apply them or not. But over time, every member of the team, because of their belief in owning the work and really having a high level of accountability to the work, to the company, and to each other, all of the framework bits and pieces work themselves out over time. So now it's the way we work. We have a little bit more structure than we're not just going freely and planning our work as autonomous individuals. We do have weekly planning. We have a weekly review. We use radical focus as kind of like a little bit of a scrum layer on top of our weekly planning. So while we have more of a Kanban approach, we do check in with ourselves at the beginning and end of every week and plan in advance how much work we hope to achieve during the week. And then at the end of the week, making sure that we fulfilled our commitments to ourselves. So that's how we have been doing things in my team.
And can you talk about how important it is to have executive leadership when deploying agile practices?
Yeah.
It sounds like your previous company, that's one of the things that even if you amassed a team that thought they all wanted to work in a certain way, without some parameters of structure, OKRs, goals that the company has to all work together, a team could easily go off the path. And
yeah, a lot of this, again, depends on the mindset. So I think a lot of it comes down to hiring. Hire well, hire people who see accountability as the other side of autonomy. You have to show that you're accountable to hold on to your autonomy and to demonstrate that you use your autonomy responsibly. There was an article that I just read recently about how high-performing teams have a disciplined approach to work. I think this was from a VP at LinkedIn. And so, discipline is not a bad thing, and it's not a horrible, onerous thing that we all have to buckle down to. It actually can be extremely freeing because once we're disciplined, it's often the case that we don't get poked and nudged and nagged by other stakeholders, other teams, because we're showing that we're autonomous and live to our word and deliver on our promises and mindful of what others are expecting from us. And so, yes, certainly executive leadership in our case at Zalando has been on board with Agile, but in any organization, you have to have a clear understanding of what Agile can mean, because it's going to mean different things for different teams. There's no one size fits all solution, but there has to be sort of a general understanding of the values that Agile reinforces when it's done properly, transparency, honesty, accountability, those kinds of values.
Excellent. So walk us through an example of a project or something that you've worked on and your team was able to improve it because of the Agile process.
Sure. So my team, being really enthusiastic and owning their work and really wanting to get things done and being very committed, had a little bit of a overcommitment approach to, planning too much for a week and then realizing that we couldn't deliver on all the ideas that we'd hoped to achieve when we did our Monday planning. So I just sort of nudged the team to, I'm not a big fan of estimates, but sometimes when you're using t-shirt sizes, it can be helpful to just ballpark how big of a task we're talking about when we say, we're going to do this. And so, helping the team to sort of give themselves more reasons to celebrate at the end of the week than having at the end where we only finished half the tasks, and reminding them that they didn't have to go crazy, staying up all night, working overtime to achieve everything, that it was okay to commit to a little bit less of work and offer some more buffer time, and also be really mindful of the work-life balance so that they didn't feel as much pressure to work through the night. And so that helped us to actually start planning more so that we could, by the end of the week, have that kind of, we use this template. So it's green check marks for done and red X's for didn't complete. And so we have like a nice template of green at the end instead of red. And so this was just helping the team decide. Like, I don't tell them, nobody tells them what to deliver or not in a given week. It's all their own decision. So this was just some kind of questioning to make sure that they set themselves up for success.
Because you're not using Scrum, do you find that there are other ways to kind of step in and do this? As a member of the team, how do you get their attention to say, okay, looks like we are overcommitted. Can we refocus some of these tasks?
I think a lot of it is in planning. So making sure that you can actually deliver the thing in that week so that there are no loose ends, no unforeseen risks, no dependencies that we haven't considered. And then really breaking the work down as much as possible into small tasks. I think that's really just the trick, making sure that you address all the generalities and ambiguities and put clarity on work by being more specific about each step. And then that enables you to get a clear overview of what you're actually going to have to do to call something done.
You mentioned the template. What other metrics it's good to see a sea of green check marks at the end of the week. So that's one metric. But how else do you measure your team's success?
So we have team OKRs, and those roll up into the department level OKRs, and the department level OKRs roll up into the company OKRs. So we, every week, will measure against our OKRs to see if we've made progress. And, in our way of doing things, a 1.0 is a stretch goal. So it's possible, but we're really stretching ourselves to get there. So definitely more in the 0.7, although we have gotten to 1.0 in many things. But, using that 0.7 is a pretty good indicator that we've made enough progress that we're relatively satisfied. So every week we will check in to make sure that we're making progress on those OKRs. Then we also do team autonomy health checks. So that's once a month where the team is asked 6 questions about, how it's making decisions. Are the team members using the best tools? How is the balance between product and engineering in terms of discussion and resolving questions? So every month we just send out a form for the team to fill out individually, and then collecting that data and seeing if there is anything. It's on a red, green, yellow scale. So if anything is yellow or red, we have to look at that and say, okay, like in our retrospectives, like here's what we would do. Then we also have started asking other teams in search how we are performing. Our teams finding that we're delivering software that they feel confident in. Are we communicating with them clearly? And, this was a decision taken by the team itself. And then once a month, we send it out, collect the results. And this is actually in our OKRs that we want to achieve a certain level of satisfaction and see continuous improvement there. So those are 3 ways.
That's amazing. So you are actually kind of looking at your peer search groups as your own customers. And so
absolutely
fulfilling their expectations is really important. And because it is an OKR, you are providing that kind of radical transparency in not just your work, but also expecting that communication back of open communication. And so people will mention if you are not performing or something could be improved on. I think that's very unusual. Have you heard of that in other places, to have such radical kind of communication between teams, as well as this very institutionalized structure, OKRs, objective and key results? We may have heard Google using them as a goal-setting tool, but to have that structure go up and then also across the organization seems like it really plays into that accountability mission.
Yeah. So I think there are other companies using this. So for example, with InnerSource, which is like the open source collaboration model, but taken internally, it would drive the same type of communication So like with our team, we want to have this peer feedback in part so that we know that we're not having teams wait on us for specific needs. If they do have to wait on us for any reason, that we document that so that we look at it and improve for the future. So that we can actually see those opportunities for team-to-team collaboration, because, in Search, we do share a lot of architecture and we are providing service for other teams and they rely on us. So we really want to make sure that if there are different ways of tackling problems, that we include those other teams in the solution side. And this is close with InnerSource, and sometimes it actually is InnerSource. We will have a team helping us, or we will actually, I think it's more often the case where we might make a pull request to another team's architecture. But all of our repositories are open to the teams around us. Everyone can look and see what we're doing. We have an on-call search, so we're doing 24/7 in search, and it's members of my team and members of other teams. And so if other teams have to make some kind of fix to address an incident, they need to understand how our services work and know where the documentation lives and have updated playbooks. So in that sense, we're all in it together. And so we want to take a lead in driving that kind of mindset and those questions. And I think this is all like the developers deciding, I help them, but it's really the developers deciding that this is how they want to work and the kind of communication that they want to be driving. And they've done a really great job of that.
And that really plays on all three of Daniel Pink's points of autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
So I think there's so much emphasis on technical skills in software engineering. And, there's lots of discussions about the human side of development as well. And my Twitter feed is probably not like most people's Twitter feeds, because I tend to follow all of the people who really advocate for communication and transparency and, talking. But I think that there are quite a lot of people in the industry who realize that these are extremely important skills to have. Making a dependency clear to other teams, setting deadlines, being proactive and reaching out to other teams, driving communication processes. These are all things that we can all develop, practice, and get better at. And whether we're introverted or extroverted, it really doesn't matter. Some forums might be more comfortable for us than others. We might not want to get on a stage. We might want to write an email instead because of some hesitation around public speaking or things like that. But in the end, we can all communicate with each other and get better at it. And so definitely with my team, they came prepared and pretty well equipped to start these kinds of conversations. But even with the skills that they brought, because many people joined within the last year because of the department growing and expanding. But even in the past year, I've seen people really step up and improve. And it's because they realize that communicating is half of the job. And
like with any relationship, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, communication as half of the job, making your presence known and also raising issues, being able to stay on target for dates of delivery. All of these are very important. And without that foundation of communication and being able to talk through issues as they arise, you can see teams becoming, as you said, overwhelmed, missing deadlines, and then having a template full of red checks instead of green. So what other advice do you have for teams that are either thinking about adopting Agile or trying to make their way through it? Communication obviously is paramount.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I've been in tech for maybe a little more than 5 years total. What I see working and really being the maker breaker for teams being productive and delivering effectively and enjoying the work is really trust. If you don't have trust, you really don't have anything. There's a great article by my fellow open organization ambassador. So I'm a part of this program that Red Hat runs called the Open Organization Ambassadors. And we're a volunteer group from around the world that meets once a month, and we write articles at opensource.com, and we create maturity models for open organizations. So that means, in other words, how organizations can measure how transparent, collaborative, adaptive they are. My colleague on that, Ron McFarland, made this great article last year about trust. And he mentions that in a high trust environment, you can disagree violently, like not with fists, but like be on totally opposing sides. But at the end of the day, because trust is keeping you together, you can shake hands, go off and have dinner. And there's no hard feelings whatsoever. Everybody realizes that this is a debate about ideas. In a low trust environment, you can agree with somebody 100%, but because of the ambient lack of trust, you may have to explain multiple times. You may have misunderstandings. You might have to document things really thoroughly. And this all eats up time. So when you are starting to use Agile frameworks in your development, you have to make sure that trust is possible and work towards that, in my belief. And you do that by making sure that everybody treats each other with respect, treats each other as an adult, understands that every person can make a difference in the team and is valuable. So whether they're an introvert, an extrovert, a junior, a senior, whatever you have in your team, every person can make that team high performing. But they have to feel comfortable being there. And the only real way they can do that is by, obviously, being inclusive is essential, but that comes from showing that every member is trusted and can trust each other. If you don't have that, it's just going to be a lot more difficult. It's going to take a lot more time, a lot more documentation to get to have that team that you really want to have. So if we're talking about at the organizational level, top management has to trust the teams to be able to work in an agile way, but the teams also have to be able to trust upper management that they can be experimental, that they can fail, that they can take risks, calculated and informed risks, not reckless risks, but that they are trusted to take the right kinds of risks and that the management will have their backs, and also be clear but respectful if a team does go off the tracks, like completely. There has to be trust coming from the top and the bottom, and middle is also very important. And I see that sometimes missing in organizations. A change will come from the grassroots, or it'll come from the top, or maybe it'll come from both. But if you don't have the middle engaged, then it's going to be a lot harder, a lot more confusing for everybody to understand, okay, what kind of interpretation of Agile are we talking about here? Are we talking about just simple frameworks? Are we actually going to put the values behind it, behind those frameworks? You have to have a fairly clear, consistent message from all levels of the organization for there to really be like a cohesive way of working. If one part is missing, it's going to be a lot more complicated.
That's really telling, because it's actually part of that personal drive for accountability is the other side of autonomy, right? So you are personally accountable, your team's accountable, everyone is accountable to each other, which makes it not just a company that uses Agile, but uses a flavor of Agile that is particularly successful for this mission of becoming an even larger global platform for fashion. Well, thank you very much, Lauri. I really appreciate you joining us here today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope I helped your audience.
Absolutely. No, it's been great having this discussion. I think that thinking about trust as a very human action and thing that we all have to kind of participate in as we grow and build our companies is a primary idea here. Thank you again.
Yeah, I think it's really important just to underscore that when your organization is undertaking transformation, that it takes time, and it's going to be a mindset shift for probably many members of your organization. And so it's the responsibility of everyone who can to provide consistent guardrails to make sure that the change is understandable and that the purpose for the change is clear to everybody who's expected to participate in it. So, this is sort of like I see it as guardrails. You allow people to drive at the speed that they'd like, in the car that they would like, with the air freshener that they would like. But you have to provide some structure, just enough. And I think at the beginning it often takes more structure, but the idea is that with time, you reshape the habits by creating a different context for people to work, in a more agile way. And then you can let go of the training wheels or the the structure, you can minimize that and allow, and then these teams in your organization will hopefully then have adapted to the habit that form a great productive agile team. And then you don't have to be so prescriptive.
And that's what goes along with that autonomy. Thank you
Yes.
very much, Lauri. I really appreciate you joining us here today.
Thank you too.